Amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, there are growing calls within the international community to avert the loss of innocent lives in Gaza amid the looming Israeli ground invasion. Seoul International Aerospace and Defense Exhibition 2023, the country's biggest arms showcase, gets underway this week. We have a preview and up-close look at the country's most up-to-date military assets, from the KF-21 fighter jet to the future of the K-defense industry. The nation's tech sector saw its smallest export decline of the year in September, thanks to some improvement in the semiconductor industry. It's October 16, 2023. This is News Center. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. Amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, countries across the world are raising their voices to avert the loss of innocent lives in Gaza amid the looming Israeli ground invasion, including U.S. President Joe Biden. In the meantime, eyes are on the reopening of an Egyptian-controlled crossing amid a humanitarian crisis. Lee Soo-jin begins our coverage.
The international community is mobilizing to minimize civilian casualties from the Israel-Hamas conflict as a ground war seems imminent. Although the Israeli military warned all civilians in the Gaza Strip on Friday local time to evacuate to the south ahead of a possible ground assault, concerns about a humanitarian crisis continue to grow as the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt remains closed. The Rafah border crossing is currently the only potential exit and means to receive supplies of fuel, electricity, and water for most Palestinians in Gaza after Israel closed its two border crossings and imposed a complete siege on the territory. The United States has been urging Egypt to reopen the Rafah crossing, and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken told reporters in Cairo on Sunday that soon will be, although he did not specify exactly when.
I had very good conversations both with the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia and here in Egypt with President al-Sisi, and also heard, I think, a lot of good ideas about some of the things we need to do moving forward, including practical ideas on getting assistance to Palestinians in Gaza who are in need.
And U.S. President Joe Biden, in a 60 Minutes interview with CBS on Sunday local time, said that Israel had to respond to the Hamas attack, but that it would be a big mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza. He also added that Israel will do everything in its power to avoid the killing of innocent civilians. Western officials have also privately been urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other senior officials to delay the ground attack to allow civilians to evacuate. They have also called for the nation to provide access to humanitarian aid as concerns about civilian deaths continue to mount, according to the Financial Times. Leaders of the Arab League and the African Union released a joint statement in which they urged Israel to reconsider the ground offensive as it could lead to a genocide of unprecedented proportions. The future of the displaced Palestinians remains uncertain, even though the Egyptian-controlled Rafah crossing is expected to reopen, as Cairo remains opposed to the resettlement in Egypt, and because it will be difficult for them to return to their homes in Gaza once they have fled. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, authorities in Korea have decided to further extend fuel tax cuts until the end of the year, in line with efforts to better contain the potential ripple effects of the conflict in the Middle East on global oil prices. Moon Tae-ryun has details.
South Korea will be extending its fuel tax cut until the end of the year amid concerns regarding supply due to the conflict between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas. During an emergency economic meeting on Monday, Finance Minister Joo-hyung stated that the government will prioritize people's livelihoods as the world grapples with economic uncertainties.
We will be making all efforts to stabilize livelihoods and prices by focusing on the management of food and energy prices.
The tax cuts, which were lowered to 25% for gasoline and 37% for diesel in January this year, were initially put in place to help curb inflationary pressure amid rising oil prices. This isn't the first time the government has given an extension. It was extended once back in April and then again in August. The most recent extension was set to expire at the end of this month amid a fall in the country's tax revenues, but the conflict between Israel and Hamas prompted Seoul to extend it further.
Energy and supply chains could be at risk depending on how the conflict develops, and we cannot exclude the possibility of facing difficulties despite global inflation seemingly slowing.
Bloomberg Economics also released a report last Friday forecasting an oil price hike of more than $64 to $150 per barrel should the conflict develop into a war between Israel and Iran. Iran is not only a major source of oil, but it also controls the Strait of Hormuz, through which over a fifth of the world's oil is transported. If Iran blocks this route due to military engagement, a sharp rise in oil prices would be unavoidable. International oil prices surged by around 6% last Friday due to reports that Israeli ground forces were about to be deployed in the Gaza Strip. Tues said that the South Korean government will remain vigilant in order to respond as quickly as possible to any new situations that may arise. 문혜련, Arirang News.
One of Northeast Asia's largest aerospace and defense exhibitions, dubbed Seoul ADEX 2023, kicks off tomorrow. Visitors can get a look at the latest technology that they don't get to see every day, including the homegrown KF-21 for the very first time. What's also worth noticing this time is an unusual landing of U.S. strategic bomber, the B-52. Our defense correspondent, Choi Min-jung, has a preview.
South Korea's first homegrown supersonic fighter jet, the KF-21, soars above Seoul Air Base. It's being revealed to the public for the very first time at the biennial Seoul International Aerospace and Defense Exhibition, taking place from Tuesday to Sunday. This year's exhibition is the largest so far, with some 550 entities from 35 countries taking part. Spectators can get a rare up-close look at the country's latest military equipment, such as the F-35A stealth fighter jets and the F-A-50 light attack aircraft. Also on display is the country's main battle tank, the K-2 Black Panther, which shot to fame when Poland struck a deal to purchase 1,000 of them last year. And to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the Seoul-Washington alliance this year, the U.S. has boosted its display of military power.
Yes, the B-52 will conduct 1 to 2 flybys of Seoul Airfield during Seoul ADEX.
U.S. strategic bomber the B-52 is making an appearance as it is making a rare landing at a South Korean airbase this week. Also, one of the key U.S. assets on display is the F-22 Raptor, known as the world's most powerful fighter jet. Seoul ADEX has been growing in size with every edition, with Korea looking to become one of the world's top 4 defense export countries. It's also striving to become one of the world's top air shows.
We'll do our best to make Seoul ADEX, which will be held again in 2025, one of the world's top 3 air shows.
Taking this as an opportunity to promote the country's advanced military and space technologies overseas, South Korea has invited senior-level military officials and delegations from 53 countries. The exhibition was first launched in 1996 to promote domestic defense firms and boost global technology exchanges. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
This year's Seoul Defense Dialogue will be held from tomorrow until Thursday. Ministers from countries including Australia, Malaysia, and Mongolia will participate in the event, as well as hundreds of officials from 56 different countries. The officials will discuss the escalating North Korean nuclear threat and the changing dynamics of global security. The war in Ukraine, as well as the recent Israel-Hamas conflict, will likely be discussed at the event. Sources say the dialogue seeks peace on the Korean peninsula, as well as promotes security cooperation in the region. The high-level multilateral meeting has been held by South Korea's Defense Ministry since 2012. South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin met with American Special Envoy on North Korean human rights issues, Julie Turner, today in Seoul. Park said the appointment of the Special Envoy following a 6-year vacancy is a significant step, as it strengthens the foundation upon which Korea and the U.S. can together advance human rights in North Korea. Ambassador Turner, on her very first full day on the job since being sworn in on Friday, said the human rights situation in North Korea remains amongst the worst in the world, and that the international community needs to work together to create concrete change. She will stay in Seoul until Wednesday. There are subtle yet tangible signs of improvement in Korea's exports of ICT goods amid relative stability in the semiconductor industry. An Sung-jin explains.
As South Korea's tech exports in September reached $18.1 billion, according to the Trade Ministry on Monday, the country saw a $7.3 billion trade surplus in ICT trade. Though still showing an on-year decline, tech exports have improved from May, leading to the smallest on-year decline of the year, at 13.4% last month. This is mostly due to an improvement in the semiconductor industry, which saw its highest export value this year as inventories cleared out. With semiconductors having a relatively sluggish start to 2023, September's value of exports was the highest of the year so far. Semiconductor exports were still lower than for the same month in the year before, but that on-year decline has decreased to 14.4%, with semiconductor exports standing at around $10 billion as memory and system semiconductors both improved. However, the weak prices of memory chips is slowing their recovery. Meanwhile, the export of displays was in the black for the second consecutive month as OLED exports increased. China takes up nearly half of South Korea's ICT exports, but exports to China were down 22% on-year. Exports to Europe in September decreased by 12.2% on-year, while exports to the U.S. also fell by 18.7%, even though exports of mobile phones saw an increase. ICT exports to Vietnam, meanwhile, saw an increase of 1.9%. Though there are slow signs of recovery in the tech industry, with an overall slowdown in the global economy, exports of mobile phones and computer devices continue to decrease. Han Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Leaders from Asia-Pacific nations gathered this week in Korea to discuss how to envision digital and data cooperation. There, South Korea renewed its support for the establishment of a digital order and shared prosperity that's in tandem with what President Yoon has earlier laid out in New York. Our Lee Si-woo has heard what the participants had to say.
South Korea is doing its best to achieve shared prosperity in digital technology with countries around the world. That is according to Science Minister Lee Jong-ho at the Regional Consultation for the Asia-Pacific on the United Nations Global Digital Compact that kicked off in Seoul on Monday.
South Korea supports the UN's establishment of principles of digital resources and will actively participate in the making of the order and solidarity of the international community.
For 2 days beginning on Monday, government, business, and academic leaders from 11 Asia-Pacific nations are discussing ways to envision digital and data cooperation. Co-hosted by the South Korean government and the UN Office of the Secretary General's Envoy on Technology, the meeting provides a chance for the region to exchange their views on realizing a shared vision.
So a consultation like the one today that's being hosted by the Republic of Korea is really important for countries to come around a table and really discuss how we can actually work together on leveraging the power of digital technologies for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
The consultation follows Seoul's commitment to establishing a digital order and principles as shared by President Yoon Suk-yeol at the UN General Assembly last year. This year, the South Korean government published what it calls the Digital Bill of Rights.
The Digital Bill of Rights presents 5 principles to achieve an exemplary society that people around the world should pursue. They are freedom, fairness, safety, innovation, and solidarity.
The Digital Bill of Rights lists specific principles based on 6 categories. They include ways to safeguard freedom, offer fair access, as well as promote innovation and human well-being. Meanwhile, the results of the consultation will be reflected in the UN Global Digital Compact set to be signed at the Summit of the Future in September 2024. Lee Si-woo, Arirang News.
The 2023 Sustainable Development Transformation Forum commenced in Incheon, South Korea on Monday. Hosted by the United Nations Office for Sustainable Development, around 100 participants from various sectors convened to discuss ways to reinforce the 2030 agenda. The 15-year plan developed by the UN in 2015 is designed to pursue its Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, to tackle major universal issues such as poverty and environmental concerns. Marking the midpoint of the 2030 agenda, this year's forum will center around eradicating poverty. The UN office, established in 2011, is dedicated to implementing the SDGs, particularly for developing countries. With the recent closing of the Hangzhou Asian Games and the upcoming Hangzhou Asian Para Games this week, this Chinese city is more than just sports for Korea. It's where Korean independence fighters found a new beginning after facing tough times in Shanghai. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin went there and files this report.
Hangzhou, the host of the largest ever Asian Games, holds a special place in Korea's heart beyond the medals and records. Right next to the famous Sihu, or West Lake in Hangzhou, you'll find the Memorial Hall of the Korean Provisional Government.
So originally there were 3 Korean Provisional Government buildings here in the city of Hangzhou, but this is the only one that's left. So as you can see, this building, it was originally used by government officials until 1934, but now it's used as an exhibition hall.
Open to the public since 2007, the Memorial Hall has 2 main sections: a recreation of the rooms used by the government and an exhibition hall that tells the story of the Korean Provisional Government's 27-year struggle for independence. The Korean Provisional Government was set up in 1919 in Shanghai after the March 1st independence movement. However, it had to relocate after independence activist Yoon Dong-il set off a bomb in Shanghai's Hongkou Park in 1932 that killed several high-ranking Japanese military officials. Fleeing from Japan's invasion of Shanghai, the Korean Provisional Government found refuge at an inn in Hangzhou in 1932. But due to budget constraints, they later moved their headquarters here to Hubian Village a year later. This 2-story building served as both a home and a workplace for government officials. Records showed that they stayed in Hubian until November 1934 before moving to their 3rd and final headquarters in Hangzhou, Wufuli. The memorial's director says the 3.5 years in Hangzhou were a crucial turning point for the Korean Provisional Government. It was during this period when Kim Gu, one of the founding members of the government, secretly met with then-Chinese leader Jiang Jieshi, where Jiang pledged to fund Korean independence fighters. Kim also established the Korean National Party, which united various scattered groups of independence activists. So, for those who want to step back in time and take a look at this history, the hall is open every day from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., free of charge. 송유진, Arirang News, Hangzhou.
Time now to have a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. Joining us is our sports editor, Paul Need. Hello, Paul.
Hello there.
Let's start with golf. Kim Joo-hyung, or Tom Kim, as he's known on the PGA Tour, defended his Las Vegas at Crown.
Yes, that's right. He did the Shriners Children's Open. That was done on Sunday local time. He finished at 20 under par, or 264 shots there, 1 stroke fewer than Adam Hadwin of Canada. That gives Kim 3 PGA Tour wins and his 2nd Las Vegas title in as many years. It also means that a South Korean has won this tournament for 3 years in a row, as Im Sung-jae won it in 2021. For Kim Joo-hyung, he is now 3rd when it comes to South Korean wins on the PGA Tour, behind Chae Kyung-ju with 8 and Kim Si-yoo with 4. He's also only the 2nd South Korean golfer to defend a PGA Tour event back-to-back. Lee Kyung-hun is the other who won the AT&T Byron Nelson in 2021 and 2022. Meanwhile, in the women's game, South Korea's Choi Hye-jin tied for 3rd at the Buick LPGA Shanghai, narrowly missing out on her first ever LPGA win.
Let's talk about tennis. We had the WTA Korea Open in Seoul over the weekend. Who won?
Well, it was actually the US-born half-Korean Jessica Pegula. She beat Weian of China 6-2, 6-3 in Sunday's final at Olympic Park Tennis Center. It was her 2nd title of the season and 4th overall. Pegula was the top seed heading into the tournament and only dropped 1 set. Impressively, Sunday's victory was Pegula's 53rd of the season, which puts her level with world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka for the second highest number of wins on the WTA Tour this year. Speaking after the match, she said it was really special for her to win in Korea, her mother's country of birth.
And moving on to two of Korea's most popular domestic sports, KBO, baseball and K-League football, both are heading into the postseason.
Yes, that's right, they are. Starting with baseball, the KBO, the postseason begins this Thursday. It does so with a clash between 4th versus 5th in what's known as the wildcard round. 4th only needs to tie in the first game to advance, whereas 5th must beat 4th twice in a row. But it's still not decided who those two teams will be, as the regular season only ends on Tuesday and it's all very, very tight. As for football, the K-League 1 season will begin final round this Friday with Pohang Steelers hosting Incheon United. The league is now split into two, Final A and Final B. There's the league title up for grabs, also places in the Asian Champions League in Final A. In Final B, though, it's all about surviving relegation, with 5 of the 6 teams in the bottom half still not safe.
And speaking of football, the South Korea national team won on Friday. What can you tell us?
Yes, 4-0 against Tunisia for what was the team's first home win under Jurgen Klinsmann, their new manager. The goals came from Lee Gang-in, who scored 2 in 2 second-half minutes, including a superb free kick. Then an own goal by Yasin Maraya, who got the last touch from a Kim Min-jae header, and Hwang Hee-jo in time added on with a clinical finish. Lee, he was one of 3 players to start who were part of the Asian Games gold medal winning team, along with Sol Yong-woo at right back and Hong Hyun-sok in midfield. Up next is Vietnam this Tuesday night at Seoul World Cup Stadium. It'll be the team's last friendly before World Cup qualification begins in November.
All right, as always, thanks for the wrap-up. See you next week.
Thank you. See you.
Clear skies and light breeze will lead us to another chilly day tomorrow. With much colder mornings ahead, temperature gaps will widen further. Most regions will be starting off at single figures, while highs will be jumping significantly. Tomorrow's high will be starting off cold at 8 degrees Celsius, which is the coldest morning of the season so far. Highs will be jumping drastically to 20 degrees. For places like Hangzhou and Gochang, wider temperature gaps will be seen. Inland regions will see patchy layers of fog for the morning hours. Regions with higher elevations, such as mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province, will see frost and even ice at times. For the East Coast, high waves are in the forecast, along with gusty offshore winds. For those near the coastlines, please stay away from breakwaters or piers. Sunny skies will dominate tomorrow. Morning temperatures in Seoul will be starting off at 8 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul will get up to 20 degrees, Daejeon and Gwangju 21, Busan will be topping out at 23 degrees. Our next chance of rain will arrive this coming Thursday for central regions and Jeollado province. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is News Center for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.